I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, call the roll.
Lloyd. Dunlap.
Here.
Casper.
Here.
Chalada.
Here.
Lloyd. Here. Barry.
Here.
Nenza.
Here. 3.1, CMS ILMEA Honor Band and CMS ILMEA Choir. Ms. Dexter?
Hello, everybody. My name is Mrs. Dexter, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about ILMEA before we recognize our students. ILMEA stands for Illinois Music Education Association. Illinois is divided into 9 districts, and Central Middle School is in District 1, which encompasses all of the Chicagoland area. The band and choir students you see here tonight went above and beyond to make the commitment to audition. This required extra learning for their music and their skills to audition. They auditioned by preparing and recording videos to be submitted for judges' scoring. The students here tonight were selected to perform in the honor band and the honor choir. The students' day looked like they joined together with the honor band and honor choir at Lincoln Way Central on Saturday, November 6th. They had the opportunity to work with guest clinicians. The guest band director was Beth Peterson, Associate Director of Bands at the University of Illinois, and the guest choir director was Jason Hawkins, Director of Choral Activities at Western Illinois University. Throughout the day, students had rehearsals, they had sectionals, and the day culminated in a performance at 3 p.m. in the field house. The band performed selections, the marches of John Williams, Blues for a Squirrel in the Rain, West Highland Sojourn, and the ILMEA choir performed Come to the Music, Moli Hua, Shine on Me, Dies Irae, and Waving Through a Window. Before I have the students come up, Mr. Freeland, Ms. McBride, and I want to thank the board, the administration, Dr. Stalick, and Angela for organizing this for our students. Mr. Freeland today was unable to attend this evening, but he extends his congratulations to all of you on your outstanding achievement. We'll start with the band students first, and how would you like them to line up?
We're going to come up first, okay, and then you can announce them one at a time.
Sounds great. I'll get out of the way. And once you receive your award, we'll have you stay up so we can have a picture of all the ILMEA students together. All right, the band students will recognize for ILMEA Honors Band, Reagan Dorr. Marnie Hemler was unable to attend, but let's give her congratulations. Ran Jobber. Joel Ricard. Riley Stein. Ryan Walsh. And Dash Wilson. The students being recognized for ILMEA Honor Choir tonight are Sarah Anderson Stewart, Megan. And Allison Noga. Thank you, students, for all of your hard work. We're going to take a picture with all of you here together, okay?
Can we get the boys in front and kneeling? And then everyone else kind of.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. Got it.
You got the government.
All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Parents time.
Hold it, hold it. No pressure, guys.
Good job, guys. Good job. Yes, I'll take it back. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And everyone is welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting, but now is a time for a graceful exit if you have other evening activities you need to get to. Excellent. 4.1, Superintendent's Report.
Yes, thank you. The first topic is regarding changing guidelines by some of the health departments with regard in particular to the way we treat quarantines or lengths of exclusion for close contacts and things of that nature. So last week, the CDC said that they were going to recommend a reduction in quarantine length from 10 days to 5 with some other recommendations about what to do for days 6 through 10. And initially, the Illinois Department of Public Health said that that would not include schools, and there was a bit of a roar, and then the next day they said that it would. So I was really expecting a new round of guidance from IDPH either Friday or today. It hasn't come yet. I'm told that it is still forthcoming. As you can imagine, their guidelines are quite cumbersome, and they need to make sure that any changes that they make don't have other implications throughout the document. So not making excuses for them as much as I'm kind of using my own imagination to figure out why we haven't gotten it yet. So it's my understanding that the Illinois Department of Public Health will be offering new guidelines shortly, and that has been the organization that sets the standard of care for public schools in the state of Illinois. So when the Illinois Department of Public Health adjusts their guidelines, we quickly move to adjust ours. So I'll just say a couple things about what I'm expecting those guidelines to say, if in fact they're based on what the CDC has changed. The main one I've already mentioned, I'll go into a bit more detail, is that exclusion or quarantine will be reduced from 10 days till 5, with the understanding that the person was either asymptomatic the whole time or had symptoms that have remedied by day 5, and that they're fever-free for at least 24 hours without fever-reducing medication. And if they do, they can be re-included in day 6 with the understanding that they've got a quality mask that's properly fitted and that they're 6 feet or more whenever that mask is removed. In our case, that would be relevant to lunch period. We do have some students that are having lunch at 6 feet at the request of their family. So we'd be able to include these students in with those students rather seamlessly. So we look forward to that. Of course, anything that reduces exclusion is a good thing. It doesn't increase rate of infection, and the health department seemed to be in agreement that if symptoms have remedied and the fever is gone, that their risk to perpetuate the disease is gone. So that's a good thing. It's also a good thing for us from a staffing standpoint. I mentioned to the board a couple days ago that we were prepared, or to, I believe it was just to Darcy, that we were in good shape to open schools today. And then as this morning happened, it was quite a challenge, not to get the schools open, but to develop, to deliver the types of services that we're accustomed to delivering. Principals have had to do a lot of internal substitution in order to get the school day covered, and sometimes that means a specialist may not be doing their thing, or a teacher that teaches specials may be doing something else, or teachers will be teaching also during their planning period, which makes it challenging as well. And there was a good number of that happening in all of our schools today. And the reason is we don't have adequate substitute teachers, and that's a problem that area superintendents have been discussing since far before this school year, since the beginning really of the pandemic. The pandemic is the dramatic need for substitute teachers and them seemingly being unavailable to us. So anything that will reduce exclusion will also help us from a staffing standpoint, because it's very difficult to cover teachers when they're not present. And it's frustrating to do so when they're well and symptom-free, and in many cases vaccinated, and those other things. So applaud the CDC for showing, for paying attention to the science in that area and freeing that up for us, and encouraging the Illinois Department of Public Health to do what they said they do late last week, which is include that new thinking in their guidance for schools as well. So when they do, we'll quickly move. We've already begun putting pen to paper so that we're ready to do that. Again, we're anticipating what their guidelines are going to say. We're going to have to give it a quick read before we're ready to make that recommendation, but we'll be as prepared as we can be to implement those new guidelines as soon as they come out.
Why are we waiting? Why aren't we implementing them tomorrow? I mean, we're talking about staffing challenges. I know there's kids that are missing school that would not be missing school under the new guidelines. What are we unable to implement based upon what we know now? And a step further, what would be the downside? Couldn't we just revise the guidelines if we're out of step slightly?
Yeah, we certainly could. That's really, your first part of your question was about able, and I think at this point we're able to do it ahead of the actual guidelines if we choose to do that. The reason why a good number of the other superintendents that I collaborate with are waiting is because the devil's in the details, right? So we'll write something, put it out, and then in a day or so we'll get new guidelines from the IDPH, and suddenly our guidelines are perhaps in contradiction to theirs, and we've got to re-amend ours again. The reason why we naturally are waiting is because that's been the sequence of decision-making. Is the Illinois Department of Public Health publishes guidelines for schools. Schools read and interpret the guidelines. We discuss with other school leaders if they're interpreting it the same. It get some opinion from the lawyers. We write our guidelines consistent with those. Now, we've done that several times now, and I think we are more confident and better at it, so we've already started to imagine what our guidelines would look like under the new thing, so that we don't need a week between theirs and ours. But if the board said, we like the CDC recommendation, we think it's consistent with the science, we're confident that Illinois Department of Public Health is going to say that substantively, we could make that individual change maybe, and then,
To be clear, 230 has already adopted changes, correct? District 230? Or, I mean, my understanding, I mean, they sent a thing out to parents
On Friday.
on Friday, so I'm assuming they've already adopted. Have we spoken to Dr. Nolting about how they've gone about doing that?
I have.
What was his, I mean, I don't know if we want to talk
Yeah,
about
the conversation I had with Dr. Nolting was in confidence, but I don't know whether or not they've ratified new guidelines. I understand that they are operating under the new rules, but they were surprised that the guidelines didn't come out today as well.
Okay. So I guess I'll just say I'm in favor of operating under the new guidelines as soon as possible. That would be my opinion. I don't know what everyone else's opinion is, but that's mine. I don't see any.
Just to be clear, there aren't new guidelines yet, so what we would be doing is we would be writing new guidelines in the spirit of what we believe IDPH will be writing next into theirs.
Yeah, I guess that's to be clear, that's what I'm saying, based upon the document that IDPH put out last week.
Saying it's coming.
Saying it's coming and also outlining what they thought was coming. So I would be in favor of doing that as soon as possible. To my mind, if it is coming, I don't see the reason to have kids out of school, and I don't see the reason to be struggling with staffing if we could be doing something to alleviate that.
IDPH, what they put out clearly mentions students, what they put out on Friday, correct? And it says students 5 days. What was that they put out on Friday, if it wasn't guidelines?
It was a memo summarizing what they intended to do to the guidelines, and when they said that, we really thought, the industry thought we were gonna have new guidelines by end of business Friday, and then when we didn't, we saw, well, certainly they'll be in our lap on Monday. So that's kind of another hesitation of mine is, why haven't we gotten it yet? The memo isn't legally bonding. It doesn't require them to change their guidelines. I don't know.
So IDPH put out a memo saying that they're going to change their guidelines, but we're waiting for IDPH to change their guidelines.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct.
And did IDPH not say that they're adopting CDC, what CDC said, to the letter?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to the length of quarantine, that was my understanding, yes, Dean.
The most damaging element of all of this was the quarantines. And that last year when we came back, we quarantined 98% of the kids didn't contract COVID. Correct? I mean, it was the quarantines that were really causing the biggest
You could make an
problem.
argument that 100% of the students that we.
Two got it, and they probably didn't get it at school, otherwise more would have gotten it if they got it from here. And other districts were reporting similar results.
Dean, that's accurate. I will just kind of temper that a little bit. Just for the record, I'm with you. I want as many people in school as we can safely, as much as we can. So I don't disagree at all with what you or what Rick is saying, but I will say that this variant's quite a bit different with regard to its infectability, and the way it treats hosts and so we're the days of we don't think anyone's ever caught this at school. you know, we don't say those things anymore. The variants have changed and the infectability, fortunately, the outcomes seem to not be as bad as with previous variants, but it sure seems like this one passes a little bit easier, so.
And yet they're still recommending 5 days for the entire world, 5 days.
5 days if you're symptom-free and without fever, sure. Or if you were asymptomatic all along, sure.
In years past, before COVID was in existence, we wouldn't want them coming to school with a fever.
That's correct.
So, I mean, common sense has to play in here at some point.
Sometimes it feels like we're on a very long road to get to exactly that, Dean.
How uncommon common sense is, yes. It just seems to me, they put it out on Friday that they're going to reduce the quarantine time to 5 days if they meet the other criteria.
That's right. And like I said, my only word of caution is that it is IDPH and not CDC that sets the standard of care for the industry, so naturally,
But they have bent over backwards to say, see, whatever comes down from CDC is Moses bringing it down off the mountain. So we shall take them at their word that they will do that accordingly. And we could always, if it needs to be tweaked, if they suddenly change their mind for whatever reason, change the guidelines. But this was the one thing we wanted relief from, was these crushing quarantines. It is playing havoc on families, it's playing havoc on staff, it's playing havoc on the kids.
yeah, and I second that, Dean, especially when we're talking about the rationale behind reducing the quarantine from 10 to 5. Because when it happened, I saw a whole bunch of humor on social media about, man, the CDC's been overly cautious, overly cautious, overly cautious, overly cautious. And then there was humor in how they were seemingly throwing caution to the wind and how all of a sudden 5 days is enough. The CDC doesn't, neither end of that joke is true. The CDC, I think, does operate based on the science. And they believe that if you're not showing symptoms and
I would agree.
you're less likely to transmit it, and if you had symptoms and you've since recovered from them, that you're less likely to, you're no longer likely to transmit the disease, and that's the reason why we're reducing, and that's why I get a great deal of comfort from seeing that coming. It's my job to make sure you have all the information, and I just want to resist the temptation to rush. The protection of IDPH is what we've been leaning on, so I recommended that we waited for that actual guidance to come out, because that's been our posture all along, and it's been successful for us. But like you said, Dean, the memo was quite clear that they intended to adopt the CDC's move.
I would argue that memo would be guidance. Why else would they put that out if they weren't going to issue the guidance?
Well, except that if you Google IDPH guidelines for schools, it's still the old version, so.
I would also caution moving too quickly. I understand both points and all the points around this. My concern is communication to parents and families, and things have changed a lot all the time since the beginning of the pandemic. And my concern is if we say, yes, we're going to roll back the quarantines to 5 days, and then for some reason IDPH changes their mind and what they said, which they have a right to do, then all of a sudden we're changing it on families again. And a day or two to wait to see if IDPH actually does follow through or not, I don't believe hurts us in any way. I'm not saying that we wait 2 weeks, I'm not saying that we wait a month, I'm saying we give them a couple of days to iron out what they're doing and then find out. Now, if we haven't heard anything from them by the end of the week, then I believe probably every school district in the state is going to be banging down their door because they said they were going to do something and they haven't. But, in my experience, regulatory bodies don't come out and say they're going to do something and then not do it without some reason. So my concern, again, is that we announce something to parents, we change something, and then in 3 days, we're like, oh, wait, sorry, like, we thought this was gonna happen, but it's not gonna happen, and so now we're changing it again. That would be my concern.
I can understand that, but I'm on board with Dean and Bricky. I feel like we should do it as soon as possible. I mean, there's kids who are at home who are perfectly fine to come to school, and they're missing days for no reason. So I would have to agree. I think it should be put into place immediately. You know, I mean, we've had guidelines change with everything, and we've worked to change them again. So I feel we should definitely put it in place as soon as possible.
When do you expect that, I mean, where's the crystal ball at, right?
I really thought we were gonna get them by the close of business on Friday and didn't, so I was very surprised that we haven't received them now. We haven't even gotten, hey, they're coming, or hey, sorry, or, there's a lot of chatter, among the agencies.
Everyone else every other industry besides public education or private education as well is 5 days except for us? Is that accurate?
I don't know.
I mean, we could put a date. I don't disagree that don't want to say something on Tuesday and then Friday, oops, they changed. But as we saw with the alleged mask optional, which turned out to not be mask optional choice that they gave us, until districts started taking that option, they didn't move on the mask mandate either. So if districts start to take them at their word and kind of force their hand, I would be, what instead of the end of the week?
That would be my preference, to just give them a few days and then,
I mean,
and
we can make it go into effect next Monday, unless they change their mind, we're gonna,
It's gonna take us, no matter what we decide tonight, once the guidance comes out, we have wordsmithing to do to get it to look good. But that doesn't have to be complete before we start taking different action. If you tell us when is enough time to have waited before we do this 10 becomes 5 thing, we can flesh out the protocols for 10 becomes 5 with our voices in rooms and figure out how we're going to do it and start doing that, announce it, tell affected people and their parents and affected staff that it was this, it's now this, here's what you need to do now. We can start doing that even before we've published the new guidelines, and it'd be okay, while we're taking a day or two to write the guidelines themselves.
I mean, to be clear, I'm looking at the IDPH's. This is a plain English, what they say. IDPH plans to revise its existing regulations and guidance documents regarding exclusion from P to 12 schools to align with the time periods in the CDC's isolation and quarantine guidance, with a hyperlink to CDC's isolation and quarantine guidance. So, I mean, from my perspective, we should be we should be clicking on the CDC's isolation and guidance protocols, and we should be writing the new documents effective immediately, and we should be adopting it. I mean, this is not gray. This is pretty black and white.
How did it open, Rick? Do you mind?
What do you mean?
The statement that when you started reading, I don't remember.
IDP and ISB plan to revise
Plan
its
to revise.
Yes.
So that's the ticket there, that's announcing their intention. The guidance itself is what we're supposed to follow. I don't have any problem doing it ahead of time, but it's a little bit cart before the horse. I don't think it'll cause a problem. I don't think you're taking a risk by doing it. But they plan to revise their guidance, and their guidance is what drives ours. So I've said my piece. I'm happy to do it if you direct me to do it before the guidance. We've already begun planning to do so today. So we could take action as early as tomorrow and have it written in a day or two. Or we can take action at any time, tomorrow or any day after, and then have our document rewritten within 24 or 48 hours of when we get the actual guidelines from IDPH.
hold on, we have a board member we haven't heard from, so Jill?
Well, I'm just looking, I mean, our document as written right now
I guess I don't understand what wordsmithing, as you put it, you would have to do, because our document that we have right now has links to the CDC guidelines as adopted by ISB and IDPH. So I feel like that's the only thing we would have to change is
Just
our
check the
link.
links, make sure they're good.
So, because if I remember correctly, we didn't, personally, our school district did not veer at all from the CDC, IDPH, ISB documents, right?
Our current policy.
current policy.
We didn't,
Is exactly
we
as
took
written.
CDC word for word, correct? And this last guidance.
I can't.
I just don't
give you a
understand about
definitive.
the timeframe. You know, I'm also in favor of, well, this document that came out on Friday is a little frustrating, I imagine, for everyone. You know, it says, we're going to do this, it's all ready to go, and then don't actually get the green light.
Yes.
So, you know, it seems like this is what we're going with, but we
It's
don't
true.
have it
Right.
totally.
That's right.
So I'm fine with, you know, if we say we need to give a few days, like Friday, okay. But beyond that, it doesn't seem like there's any other work to do.
No, Jill, what all I'm saying is when new guidelines come out, I read them. I have members of my cabinet and our nursing staff read them, and then we reread ours, and then we change ours. That's what I mean by wordsmithing, just to make sure.
It just seems like it's going to be changing links, because we already have the links, and hopefully it'll say the CDC guidelines as fully adopted by ISB and IDPH. But, okay, that's what, I mean,
Yeah,
it was sounding to me like you were going to be a lot of additional work.
No, just
Which
a day or
doesn't
two to read it and read ours, and then to make ours comply with theirs.
I think it's a safe assumption that,
We
given
have-
their wording, that it's going to come, why it's taking, what should have took 5 minutes. They shouldn't have said that without the guidance already.
Well, that's
They
my
shouldn't have put anything out.
That's my concern, Dean, is that they said they were going to do something. Everyone expected them to do it on Friday. They expected them to do it today, and they haven't done it. Something is holding that back. And we don't obviously know, oh, she's locked out. Thank you. Something is holding that document back. What it is, obviously, we're not privy to know, but it's not going to be something simple if it's held it up for 2 days. You know, they're not looking for commas. There's something substantial that's either changing or they're waiting for something from someone. And obviously, again, we don't know. But, you know, my concern is, again, and I'll just restate it, we announced to families we're pulling quarantines down from 10 days to 5 days. If you're asymptomatic, following all of the CDC guidance, and then 2 days later, you know, IDPH says, well, no, actually, you're not. And then we have to go back to families and say, we're very sorry, we said 5 days, now we're going back to 10 days. And, you know, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a whole week of school. So I would just say, you know, personally, I would be much more comfortable waiting a few days and seeing what they come up with. And then again, if not, then we take them at their word. But I've seen this too many times where it's like, it's coming, everything's going to be great, and then all of a sudden, it's not so great or it's different. And I just don't want our families to get caught up in something like that. But that, again, that's my personal opinion, and that's where I'm at.
You said we needed a couple of days ahead of time. Can we move ahead with whatever we have to do ahead of time, assuming? Again, we are taking them at their word. They put this out. Nobody else put it out, but has IDPH right on the top of it.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that whatever guidance they write doesn't impact our procedures other than what link we have users click.
I mean, if it comes tomorrow morning or comes Wednesday morning or Thursday morning, that we move as fast as we can to adopt the new guidelines.
Yeah, I mean,
Given a deadline on the other end, I mean, I just can't see them. If there's a holdup, they should be more transparent and let the world know what the holdup is and why it was CDC, there was no daylight between IDPH and CDC last summer, but now all of a sudden there is. I mean, that needs to be pushed.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and I looked at the parade of communication late last week, again today, to try and make some sense out of it. And I think when the CDC's guidance went out and it said in public, or however they described the reach of what they had done, didn't apply specifically to schools, somebody said publicly, well, this doesn't, what they said doesn't apply to schools. So the only thing I can think is that IDPH got out with that memo late last week to say, oh, no, it will, calm down. And then, now they're pouring over their, I don't know how many page document, rewriting it to fit the CDC's new recommendation. That's the only, I'm trying to use my imagination to find some excuse for why it's taking them so long to do what they did. And I can't explain it. I think what Darcy explained is kind of where I've been coming from. We've followed IDPH from the beginning. I'm not sure we've always done it, Jill, to the absolute letter, where there've been some interpretations. We've been more cautious on this and a bit less cautious on that, maybe than the mainstream's interpretation of what they've said. Can't think of any examples, but there was a reason why I didn't just jump to say yes all along. We've been doing it exactly like that, because I feel like there's been a lot of detail. But I'm with Darcy in that seems to be the prudent thing, and if we're just talking about a day or two, it would be worth it. But I also can't imagine that happening. I can't imagine IDPH putting out that memo, saying they're going to rewrite their guidelines to follow CDC and then not. But it wouldn't be the oddest thing that happened since the beginning, so.
At the very least, and maybe I just don't understand what's entailed in whatever documents we have to rewrite, whatever policies. I mean, again, going back to what I read, I don't see why we would not have everything prepared so that the moment IDPH says, we have officially adopted this, that we are in a position within hours to communicate to our community to say, this is our new policy. I'm struggling to understand. I mean, they're saying they're rewriting their policies to conform with the CDC's isolation and quarantine. So why would we not be doing that right now the exact same way, so that IDPH says, it's a go, here are our new policies, we can give it a read and say, yeah, okay, we've adopted CDC's policies. Same as IDPH, we can get a communication out and we can be ready to go tomorrow, not in 2 days, not in 3 days.
Yeah, that was my point.
I mean,
Whatever advance work we need to do for that, why can't we do that? We don't.
We began that work today, and Keegan began working on a framework for communications of those things. We had Marion in cabinet with us, and we started guessing what we thought IDPH would say about what CDC said and how that would impact what we're doing. What I said earlier is that we could put it into practice immediately and then take the day to write it. It doesn't have to be in our guideline before we do it. We know what we're going to write, so we can start behaving that way right away. The key, I think, as several of you have mentioned, is the communication to families and to staff. And that we can put together in less than an hour at any given time. So it's just a matter of whether, like, how long do you want to wait? Do you want to direct me to write it before they write it? Do you want us to wait?
No, I think I would prefer that we would have it ready, yeah. I mean, you're right, it could come down tomorrow morning. And I would like that, my only concern is these quarantines are just wreaking havoc on everybody involved in the process and have been since April.
Yeah.
And
that's our life every day, is how to cover these classes for a staff person that isn't allowed to be here. I mean,
Who's healthy, who's otherwise healthy, for the most part.
there's been a good, yeah, I mean,
DG
there's been a
30
good
said,
amount of illness lately, Dean. There's been a good amount of illness. Fortunately, the pattern we're seeing is not very serious illness, which is really, really good. But it's been more about positivity than it had been.
Yeah,
But there still are a good number of healthy people on the bench that we sure could use. And
sure,
some
that's what I
obviously
meant.
Healthy kids that we would prefer to have in school.
and that's my concern, them missing 3 or 4 more days when
Yeah,
they
I mean-
don't have to.
I think we're all saying the same thing. Like, we all want the same thing. I mean, before the CDC said what they said, going from 10 to 5, going from 10 to 7, you know, there was a way to get 7 if you tested at the right time, if you timed testing, and we did that right away. We're like, wow, with the testing, that sure seems safe. When they came out and said 5, my first reaction was, whoa, 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 wow, that's a big change. And now I feel like there's this urgency to get from 10 to 5. And I have to believe that CDC believes that it's safe, and IDPH will believe that it's safe when they say it, and it must be that's what the science is saying, otherwise they wouldn't do it. But the other part that it's a big change, and I want to hear the smart people say, it's safe to do this, it's okay to do this.
I
They said they
thought
were
they
gonna
did
say
that
that.
on Friday.
They said they were gonna.
So we're gonna-
I don't know. I'm ready to do it whenever the board wants it done.
So obviously, that's what we're hearing. We do want this change to take place as it was written, as soon as humanly possible. Is this board okay with giving them a couple of days to see if the new guidance comes down?
You make a
With the-
great point about saying one thing and then ended up having to say the opposite.
That's my big concern, Dean. You know, families have had enough to deal with the change and differing information. And with a change this big, I don't want to feel like we have given something and then taken it away. And that, under, again, no fault of our own, and we can say that about many of the things and the decisions we've had to make, but I am comfortable giving IDPH a couple of days, just because I've seen this kind of thing happen before, and I just don't want, and I understand that they put it in writing. I don't know why they put it in writing, and that's the most frustrating part, I think, for everybody. But if this board is okay, that would be my preference, with the caveat that we're ready to go the minute that they say go. Like, that document comes down, we read it, and we're putting things in practice, not, you know, we read it and we're waiting. That would be my caveat.
I would think if they're going to do an about face, they would do it in the next couple days,
I would think so.
one way or the other.
Well, they're not gonna have any choice. I mean, public outcry, you know, is gonna dictate that.
And as we
because-
saw with 230, they're already moving. And there's going to be other districts that are going to be moving right now to the new guidelines. So they're going to have to.
I would believe so, yes. I don't believe that they can wait more than a couple of days.
Yeah, and I want to just, this idea of why is it taking so long? Why is it going to take so long? Like, we've been doing this for 2 years now, and I don't recall a time once that we dragged our feet. Like, we didn't get new guidance and set it on a shelf for days. I mean, we read it, we discuss it thoughtfully, we write it into practice, we announce it, and we exercise it. I mean, there's no, you have to understand that we're also running a school district while we're doing this, so we're all quite busy all the time. So I hope there's no feeling that we don't have any interest in taking too long to do this. Like, we want the change.
Well, I think it's just by you saying, you know, taking 24 to 48 hours to get it written and then letting the school and the parents know, knowing that with D230, like we had an email come out that afternoon saying, okay, guidelines have changed, this is now in effect, you know, I mean, it came that quick. So like, that's what I would want to see for our district. The second goes into effect, or we hear that it goes into effect, I would want to see an email go out to parents.
We will be ready.
Well, and I would just say too, I mean, I think part of the issue is we talk about like, you know, Darcy made a point of saying, you know, well, you know, if we pull the rug out on these kids, and it's a fair point, if the guidance changes, it goes from 5 to 10, that's a week of school. That's a long time. But we're also saying that there's kids that if we don't adopt this guidance now, they have substitutes that they might not otherwise have, they might have teachers they don't otherwise have, they're not attending school, but they might otherwise have. And so there are costs no matter what we do. And so I don't think there's been really an acknowledgement of the fact that there were kids sitting at home today because we chose not to adopt this guidance. There are kids that didn't have their teacher today because we chose to wait to adopt this guidance, and that's a real cost too. And so I guess that's the point when we're saying there's an urgency here, there's an urgency both ways, you know, and sometimes maybe it doesn't feel like we're not necessarily hearing that side of things. You understand what I'm saying?
I would add on that there were parents that didn't go to work today because they had to stay home
Yeah.
as well, on top of all that, yeah. There's a whole bunch of lives getting upended with this policy.
I think you guys need to come to some of our meetings. I mean, it's literally all we talk about all the time. There's no loss for urgency on any of this. Principals texting every morning each other if anybody's got a sub they can spare, like, it feels heightened and urgent all the time. You know, when we thought it was gonna be a 10-day crisis or a 3-week crisis and we could run on adrenaline, it's not like that. It's urgent all the time, every day. And if we don't, maybe we don't communicate that, maybe we're used to it being urgent. I don't know what the phenomenon is, but it's been, we're in a hurry all the time.
Well, we're just saying, there's a solution staring us in the face right now, or for at least a portion of it.
Yeah, but
That's
you keep
what I
saying
don't
adopting,
understand.
you keep saying adopting the guidance, and there isn't new guidance yet. I mean, the IDPH sets the standard for public schools in the state of Illinois, and their guidance still says what we're doing, what we did today is the right thing to do. They need to hurry up.
They do, but.
Or they should have kept their mouths shut until they release the new guidance. I mean, saying that
Sure.
they're gonna release it and then taking 72 hours and we still hear crickets, like,
So
that's
is it
not
your
good.
position that other districts are exposing themselves somehow by moving on this already?
No, that's a good question. I personally don't, but I know the lawyers are saying wait. And I don't know why.
They always say wait.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's why I said I don't personally know. I don't personally think that, I'm kind of over the exposure a little bit, Rick, because I think that you've got a whole universe of people doing the best they can, and I don't think there's, I don't think that doing it before they wrote it would be negligent, and I think you'd have to be negligent to be found at fault.
okay. Well, I don't want to monopolize this conversation anymore, so I'll just say I'm fine with adopting it with, as soon as everyone else is comfortable adopting it, where everyone falls on that.
I just want to, I don't think anybody on this board thinks that this isn't a top priority for the administration. I would certainly hope it would be.
I appreciate that, Dean.
But everybody believes that. We're all pushing for this, for what's best for everyone. And that's where I think this comes from. A lot of it might be his frustration pointed at IDPH. They dangled the carrot out in front, and now it's almost like they're toying with us.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think that we don't have, that the administration doesn't have our confidence. And our teachers, we know our teachers want to get back. And I don't know anybody who thinks that they're better, the kids are better off not in school.
I think you're nailing it, Dean, and I've got a lot of nerve saying, you know, you guys need a better appreciation of what we're doing all day, when I'm saying to IDPH, where's our guidance? Well, they're probably hustling their buns behind closed doors, trying to cross some legal T or some medical I. You know, they're just as busy as anybody else.
Oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and step in and say that we're going to move the conversation forward. We're going to keep an eye on what is coming or forthcoming from IDPH and give them a couple of days grace, and then after that, things will ratchet up. But I do want to go ahead and move the meeting along. So if we could move on to CMS Science Resource Review, please.
Yes, I'm
You have more on the superintendent's
I'm
report?
so sorry.
It is part of the superintendent's
sorry.
report.
Yes, I do have quite a bit more on the superintendent's report that'll go really quickly, but I just want to make sure that I do the board's will on this first one before we go. So we're going to prepare the CDC way, as we began doing so today, to be ready to go as soon as possible. And if we don't hear from IDPH, when should we go ahead and do that without it? I mean,
Would
we'll be
another
ready by-
48 hours be, I mean, by the if we don't hear from it on the close of business on Wednesday, move forward, that would have given 5 full days to get their act together. I don't know if communicating that to IDP would help through all these organizations that we pay dues to every year. I mean, that's what they're there for. They're there to lobby for us, so.
Well, I'm surely hoping that those organizations are already saying that. If they're
Well-
not, we'll communicate to them to absolutely be doing that. But again, all of education in Illinois is currently waiting, you know, and they have to know that.
And again, I go back to when they let us make a decision on the mask optional, until the district started deciding how they didn't want it to be decided, that's when they finally moved. So I would, 48 hours for something that should have took 20 minutes, another 48 hours, is that too much? Would that, by Thursday morning?
If you're looking for a hard, like, number of days, I think that's hard to get to, you know, I think we all want it immediately, but then things change every day, so for me to sit here and say 48 hours is kind of tough, too, and I don't know what tomorrow brings. Is that what you're looking for, is a number of days?
Well, I would think that rewriting the guidance is something that I typically would do with my own judgment after we got a change in guidance. This is unusual because we got a memo announcing a change in
Yeah.
guidance. I really think that we could be ready to go by the end of the day tomorrow. Just know that the devil's in the details. We don't know what they're gonna say when they do it.
So then why don't we be ready to go when you're ready to go, and then keep in contact with the board and as the days go? I mean, is that too ambiguous, or?
No, I mean, it's just, I guess we're kind of in unusual circumstances.
I've never seen anything like this, really,
Yeah,
it's
right.
like.
Typically,
really,
they would
that's-
change their guidance. We would rewrite ours. I would tell the board that we rewrote it in the spirit of the thing, and the board would say, okay. And then I would send it out, you know. So we're gonna get as ready to go as we can, and
And we're all I think we all keep in touch, you know, as the next couple of days progress, and if we've heard nothing, then, you know, we'll reconvene together if we have to, or we will have communications together, as we do for board business, and we'll go from there.
yeah, I don't think the board's gonna need to act in order for us to change.
Then-
It's a procedure anyway, but,
Then I think we're fine.
and I'll also let the board know if lots of districts are tired of waiting and they
Sure,
start
right.
doing their thing, that
Because
would
I'd be
be.
interested in, I
I know
know,
it's good right now.
yeah. I
Yeah.
can think
But I
of
know
two,
of
so if
dozens that are waiting, so,
Is
Okay.
everybody
you
good with
keep us
that?
updated on that as well, that would be great.
thank you.
Okay.
Next up is CMS Science Resources. Wendy?
Dr. Sawick. As you may recall, I've been working with the CMS Science team, researching resources and a little bit of textbook adoption this year. I just wanted to let you know that there is an update regarding science resources that's been shared in board docs, and included with that is a link if you want to dive a little deeper to see some of the potential resources we've been reviewing and examining that kind of support our teaching and student learning. We're going to continue this work and work with the teams to determine a very content-rich materials that can support our curriculum.
Thanks, Wendy. As you, parents of CMS students, have noticed, a number of different strategies for pickup and drop-off are being employed, looking for some bit of relief from all of the commuter traffic that we've experienced because of dwindling bus availability, I'm sure is a major cause, and potentially a bit less carpooling and other COVID-related things, but I think it's primarily because we don't have good bus service right now because of the bus driver shortage. But they have an updated plan that is being given a try at Central Now with the inclusion of a cell phone lot, so to speak. You've seen that concept at airports. So if the North Drive and the South Drive on Oak Park Avenue are both full and there's no room and you are going to block traffic in order to get in there, you can proceed to the next entrance and go into a portion of that parking lot that will be a cell phone lot where you can either be in touch with your child or with the school, and we can arrange the point of pickup or drop-off for you. So we're giving that a try, and hopefully that'll provide some relief, not just to our parents who are doing the yeoman's work of dropping their child off and picking it up, but also folks that don't have a child and are trying to make their way through Oak Park Avenue in the morning or in the evening. Finally, I just want to say thank you to our staff and our students in our community. We had a number of different food, toy, and clothing drives over the holiday, and even when it seems like things are scarce, we always find a way to accumulate a wealth of things for those that are more in need, and it's always warming to the heart. So you saw a number of those in the board update, photographs of piles of clothing or wrapped presents or food, but having the pleasure of having dropped some of those things off, and the looks on the faces of the people that are receiving, that get to distribute, is quite moving. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their generosity during the holiday season. Also, we have one celebration. Congratulations to Heather Lewis and her family on the birth of their daughter, Gianna Rose. Heather's OT at Fulton. And condolences to Cheryl Faustin. She lost her father, Kenneth Swanson. Cheryl's a third grade teacher at Fierk, so we share our deepest sympathy for the Faustin family's loss. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. 5.1, union report.
We don't have a union report for this.
No union report? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, 6.1, it's time for public comment. Again, this is the time for the public to inform the board on their thoughts and opinions regarding education. This is not a time for a dialogue between the board and the public. Each commenter is limited to 3 minutes. We do ask that you sign your name to the sheet on the podium roster. And we do ask that all comments are in a manner fit for public comment at a school board meeting. So with that, I will open the floor for public comment. Do we have any comment this evening?
My name's Kim Saraki. When will the abuse stop? You are mentally and emotionally abusing our children with masks that don't work and faulty PCR tests that the CDC said don't work, and you're still enforcing this nonsense. It's discrimination, and all of you should be ashamed of yourself saying up there acting like you care when clearly you don't. Stop lying to us saying your hands are tied. The Thomas DeVore case against many school districts had their district lawyers speak, and they said everything being enforced is by the school board. So District 146 is blindly following illegal and unconstitutional mandates out of fear. If school funding recognition or legal liability is truly a risk for not following IDPH, then please show me where in Illinois School Code Title 23 of the Administrative Code or anywhere else in law where this is written. I'll wait. The legislature did not give said authority to ISB, IDPH, or the governor. Stop this abuse of power. And by the way, I'm still waiting on a response for your CRT seed program that you'll also try to enforce. Enough is enough.
Once the herd accepts mandatory vaccinations, it's game over. They will accept anything, forcible blood or organ donation for the greater good. We can genetically modify children and sterilize them for the greater good. Control sheep minds and you can control the herd. Vaccine makers stand to make billions, and many of you in this room are investors. We thin out the herd, and the herd pays us for extermination services. This was a quote from Henry Kissinger to the World Health Organization Council on Eugenics on February 25, 2009. Follow the money. Bill Gates has also said that if we do a good job with vaccination, the population can be controlled. His video stating this can be found online. Look what he did to African women through his vaccinations, or what he did to children from India with his polio vaccines. Yet, his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation pictures still hang in the halls of Central Middle School. Follow the money. This pandemic has been a plandemic from the start to make sheeple out of all the people who they can scare into following ridiculous rules. The so-called vaccine is an experimental mRNA injection. It doesn't contain any dead virus cells since they have never been able worldwide to isolate the COVID-19 virus. Right now, our most valuable treasures, our children and grandchildren, are the experimental lab rats for this experimental injection. No one knows the outcome 1 year from now, nor 10 or 20. Can this experimental injection cause children to be sterile in the future or even cause their death? Do you want to know you have played a part in this experiment? PCR tests can't distinguish the flu from COVID. Where did the flu go to these last 2 years? Over 300 professional world athletes have suffered myocarditis, heart attacks, and even death after being double jabbed. Never has this happened before. Many reports of myocarditis have been reported in vaccinated high school students this year. We need to stop mask mandates. Masks cannot stop a virus. We need to cease sponsoring vaccine clinics for our children. Is there a kickback to the school for every lamb you bring to the table for slaughter? Follow the money. We are in an epic world battle of good versus evil. What side of this battle do you want to be on? Hopefully God's side. Since 2020, the most washed area of the body has not been your hands, it has been your brains. On a side note, go unvaxxed. Aaron Rodgers, go Green Bay.
Good evening. My name is Shane Wilson. My son goes to Central. You honored him tonight. He was here tonight. I appreciate that. I almost didn't bring him. I almost didn't send him to school today. And what I'm hearing from the discussion tonight is that I'm the fool. I'm a conspiracist. I'm a eugenicist. And I don't care about procedure. I have an idea why the IDPH maybe is held off, because if you visit their website, you'll find out that in Region 10, suburban Cook County, schools are the leading source of infection. It's not even close. More than 60% of infections take place in schools. The number 2 slot it's more than 10 times that number. Every day leading up to January 6th, the last date we have, infections have gone up at every age level, including children. Hospitalizations have gone up at every age level, including children. And we're debating procedure. We're debating reducing mitigating factors, and it's already happening. We're talking about band. At my son's school, they're already being told you don't need to put the little sock on the end of the instrument anymore. At the moment when COVID is at its most dangerous, you're actually removing mitigating factors. This is a very frustrating discussion because Mr. Casper said the one thing we want is relief from quarantine. No, the one thing I want is relief from fear. Is relief from fear that my son's going to get sick because we don't care enough, because we're more concerned about having enough bus drivers and having enough substitutes and not about keeping our kids well.
Mr. Wilson, I'm going to ask you to pause for just a second. Can I please ask the audience not to be making comments or to be interrupting Mr. Wilson? Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Ms. Shalata said students and teachers are missing days for no reason. I disagree. We're dealing with an infection that doesn't reveal itself, where the symptoms do not present themselves until after they've already infected someone else. That's the reason. And we're trumpeting our success. Oh, we haven't had any cases, and you decided it's because there's no disease. Maybe it's because what we've been doing is working. Maybe we don't stop halfway across the river. Maybe we kind of see this through. I know that this board has expressed great hostility towards every one of these mitigating circumstances. This board has been against masks. This board has been against distancing. This board has been against all of the things that have helped limit this disease as much as it has. I beg you to not give up. I beg you to keep in mind the health of our kids. I beg you to give me a reason not to be scared to send my son to this meeting where he's supposed to be honored for his work in school. I beg you.
My name is Sarah Lopez. I have a daughter at Central and 2 here at Fulton. My youngest, first grader at Fulton, is afraid to go to school. There are 2 places that I have thought could be her safe place: our home and school and church. So 3. She's afraid to go to school, not because of germs. Germs are welcomed for her in my home and to her, and she knows how to accept germs. She's afraid that should she sneeze from dust or allergies or the weather, the season, she will be ostracized and sent to the nurse unnecessarily. And her teacher will single her out, as her teachers have done this school year. She's afraid to be in school and express herself because she may show a similar symptom to that of what is being called a COVID-like symptom. Our children should not be afraid to walk into school and learn and be children. But my daughter was afraid to go to school today. I could not get her into the building where she could be a typical 7-year-old daughter, 7-year-old little girl. She's afraid. And that is, makes me very, very sad. And homeschooling is not an option for me. And it just, we are instilling fear in our children. And that's not okay. It's not okay at all. No matter the conversation I have at home with them, and try my best to remind them that they're safe and that they're okay and that we're doing what we are able in our home to keep them safe and well and make the best decisions for them, they are not feeling okay. And that's not okay. And there's no consistency and the way things are talked about and displaying inconsistencies in their classrooms because of substitutes, and fears that teachers even have to be in the classroom because of germs or because of all of the things. It's not okay. Our utmost concern needs to be these the future, these children. And I'm not seeing that our children are being put first in all of this at all. And we need to end the mask mandate and the push for this vaccine, and it needs to stop. Our children need to become priority again. And,
Okay, your time is up.
yep, thank you.
Additional public comment? Okay, moving on. Consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
I move we adopt item 7.1, approval of minutes, 7.2, approval of closed session minutes, 7.3, approval of 6-month review of closed session minutes, 7.4, approval of the destruction of closed session tapes, 7.5, approval of financial items, and 7.6, approval of personnel items.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Dunlap.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Shalata.
Yes.
Lloyd, yes. Barry.
Yes.
Nenza.
Yes. 7.7, approval of resolution providing for the issue not to exceed of $2.5 million general obligation limited tax school bonds, Series 2022, for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the proposed sale of said bonds to the purchaser.
Yes, this is it. This is the final step in the long journey we've taken to getting these bonds issued. Officially, this is called a parameters resolution, which means it gives us the amount not to exceed the 2.5 million. The exact amount will be based on the interest rates on the day that we actually do the sale, but it authorizes to move forward with this final step.
Okay, any questions currently? Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve the approval of resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed 2.5 million general obligation limited tax school bonds, Series 2022, for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay for the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the proposed sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just to be clear, we've been talking about this for several months, and this went, just for the purposes of information, the strategy behind doing this.
Yes, this doing it the way that it's presented tonight was the original plan all along. This is considered a small bond issue, and so an idea came up that it might be easier to just purchase our own bonds, so we would actually be investing and lending at the same time. But it turns out that that's probably not the best way to go about it, so we pivoted briefly, and now we're back to where we were. This will be a sale to an outside party.
Thank you.
Can I just say too, just real quick, I just want to say that, even though we didn't adopt that idea, I do appreciate you doing all this due diligence and making sure that we're aware of all the options that we had with regards to this financing, that is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, Secretary, call the roll.
Dunlap.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Shalata.
Yes.
Lloyd, yes. Barry.
Yes.
Nenza.
Yes. 8.1, we do not have any communication or correspondence for this evening. So moving on, 9.1, quarterly investment report.
Yes, I probably sound like a broken record on this, but the interest rates continue to be low. I guess the only good news is they're about now as low as they're going to get. The average yield on all of our investments is 0.53%, 0.5%, and most of that is due to the fact that some of our things are out longer, so the interest rates get higher as you go longer. We are at a point where inflation is picking up, so hopefully that will start to reflect also in the investments that are available to us. It hasn't really taken place yet. Just in the past few days, bond rates have started going up, so hopefully that will start to give us some opportunities to earn some more interest than we're earning now, but rates are low, and that's about all I could say.
9.2, 2022-2023 calendar draft.
Yes, as the board knows, we base our breaks on our school calendars in an alternating fashion between High School District 228 and High School District 230. This is a year coming up, the year that we're planning for, 22-23, is a year that we partner our calendar with 228s. We recently received 228s. The calendar committee, our calendar committee, had already done its foundational work, and so Wendy was ready to bring this calendar to us in cabinet today. So we decided to add it to give you first look at it, and it's an info item this month, and if the board's ready to entertain any discussion tonight, we're ready to do that. Otherwise, we look forward to a discussion and potentially ratification at the regular February meeting. Wendy, what am I missing? What else do you want to say to the board?
Just that.
Some highlights,
this
maybe?
year, oh, I'm sorry, what?
Maybe some highlights?
Yeah, absolutely. Much of this year is similar to last year, you know, when we're starting school there on the 22nd and 23rd and ending on June 7th. A couple changes, we did move our parent-teacher conferences in October, about a week later for our teacher feedback. And we have one less day on winter break. There's 10 days, plus we observe on Friday the 6th in January there, the Orthodox holiday, which we started to observe over the last few years. So we have a little less break there in January. As Dr. Staywood pointed out, at the end of March, we're following District 228 spring break, so we're off the last week. And a little bit in April there, it is Good Friday on the 7th. The committee did prefer to have that Monday after Easter off rather than Pulaski Day, so that is why that's a holiday. And other than that, most of the rest is very similar. The 21st is Eid, another holiday we've been observing in the last few years.
Can I ask about the second conferences?
Sure.
I just saw this, now, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, and I looked this year, it looks like it's a little bit week earlier, and that we talked about the second conferences, I don't remember where they were, that just happened, and it seemed like almost at the end of school, right? And so I'm just wondering, is it moved back? And because I thought we were gonna, or not we, I thought it was going to be asked about the effectiveness of having the conferences during this time.
Oh, you mean on the second one there, Julie?
The second, sorry, yeah.
To me, I think it's around the same time as we had it last year, or very close. Yeah, same as last year, that April. And you were thinking maybe.
Just in discussions that we've had with the board before and our committees talking about the effectiveness of that date for the second, I'm saying second semester conferences, but I know we're on trimester, that's what's.
Sure, I think we're going to try it one more year. I think with COVID, it's kind of, for lack of a word, messing up a little bit of that, and I think the teachers really did like having that in April at this point. They have some time to reflect on those goals and time between October and the April one. So I think I recall, I think we're going to try one more year with that time on April, around that third week of April.
Julie, remind me, I want to.
Yeah, so it's hard because I just saw it now, but I thought we were going to try one more year, which would mean this year. And I just remember having concerns in our committee last year that there was only a month left of school, and that we wanted we want it to be a good use of people's time, and what the purpose of that conference was. Was it a wrap-up? Was it still, you remember those conversations?
Yeah, and I think they look at that as more of a wrap-up from that October to April, looking at and reflecting on those goals, but that certainly doesn't mean they don't look at what they can continue to do and do next in those goals. So, go ahead.
Julie, also remember when we were doing teacher contract negotiations, and we talked about the idea of an early in the year conference, kind of being the beginning of a relationship, and then an ongoing interactive relationship electronically, and then the first one had some goal setting and then some updates on goals, and then the other one happening a bit later in the year. You know, there's still enough school left after it, if there needs to be
Yeah.
a course correction, but it is kind of a sum up of that, you know, kind of pre-conference relationship, post-conference type model, and we haven't done it yet. You know, we've negotiated, and then since then, it's been half year, full year of nonsense, and then I'm not even sure, I mean, at this point, I don't know if next year is going to be normal or not.
We did do it, actually, and so it was my experience that there wasn't that much of the school year left.
Okay,
And that was where my concerns came from.
not enough time after the second
But
one?
then I thought you were going to survey the staff, and maybe you've done that.
Yeah, with the committee and talking with the staff, they kind of liked it right where it was, but, I mean, I can
Thank you.
understand what you're saying, as far as making sure we have time, and I think we left it as, there's certainly a little time in the year, and to continue those goals into next year.
I like the model theoretically, but I haven't seen anything that made me feel strongly for or against yet.
Well, also, when we did it, it was the year that COVID.
It was,
So-
that's why I mentioned, it's kind of messy, I'm not sure it was the way it was intended because of,
Thank you.
for sure.
Thanks, Julie. And let's talk some more this month, and then we don't have to ratify until next month anyway, so.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
I move that we go into closed session for a student matter and a personnel matter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Secretary, call the roll.
Dunlap.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Schwada.
Yes.
Lloyd, yes. Barry.
Yes.
Menza.
Yes. There will be no action after closed session. Thank you, everyone.